Hello, everybody, good morning. I should say, bună dimineața, dragi prieteni. That was really good, eh? So 2 years ago, I actually had the pleasure of closing the Sharing and Reuse conference in Lisbon. And it was really such a good and exciting experience that in the end of that conference, I said to everybody that I would hope that they will act as ambassadors of the notion of sharing and reuse. And I asked them, go and make this community grow. And when I look today to this event 2 years later, when I was talking to some of the colleagues that met me in Lisbon, I can simply say that you all really did it. You took your mission very seriously. And I'm so happy that today I see already, and we are in the first opening session of this conference, I can see already a positive vibe around all of us. I'm so, as a consequence, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited. I'm really super excited to be here. On top of that, because we could add this time to the concept of sharing and reuse an extra dimension that is particularly important for all of us, the dimension of openness, of open source software. And that is very important. Now, if you tell me what would be the threefold message that I would like you to take back out of this conference. And my reflection was, public administrations have to be closer to the citizen. They have to be more effective. They have to be transparent and ethical. And if they are so, and in other words, if they become digital public administrations, then we can ensure that our values and our democratic system will be preserved for the future. Second, open, share, and link are three perspectives that are absolutely fundamental to allow us to enter and complete this journey towards digital public administrations. And as a consequence, think digital, think open. So, in Lisbon, we focus very much on the process of sharing and reuse, and we came to conclude that actually sharing and reuse is actually a very strong cultural dimension. It's like if you have to create a culture that by default we share and reuse. That's why at the time we presented to you a framework, an ensemble of practical guidelines and recommendations that would have allowed us to reuse, to share, and to jointly develop, as our commission said, jointly develop the solutions to the challenge that we face. Since then, we continue working in those guidelines, and important for us was to include on them, for example, the important dimension of security and privacy in line with the GDPR. Today we'll continue this reflection, but we will see that this reflection could not be fully effective unless we put the dimension of open source in public administrations. We need, therefore, to look at the challenges that this new dimension raises to us. Our speakers will actually share with us their own experiences in the member states in using open source in the public administrations. We will look attentively to those best practices, to this experience that they have. But it would be probably unfair to let only the member states to express this and not to testify what the Commission is doing in that front. Commissioner Gabriel already mentioned an important element that saw the light of the day in November 2018. A communication to the Commission approved at the highest level by the College of Commissioners on the European Commission digital strategy. That is a landmark for us, and I hope that the member states can look at it and possibly find inspiration as much as we found inspiration in very advanced member states and their own strategies. The Commission alluded to the basic objective of the European Commission digital strategy: to achieve a digitally transformed, user-focused, and data-driven administration. In short, the Digital Commission. Obviously, the Tallinn declarations and the principles embedded there have been guiding principles for our own strategy. And so, once only principle, user centricity, digital by default, interoperability and cross-border, cross-domain, as well as security, privacy, transparency, and openness were informing on the basis our digital strategy. How do we want then to deliver this digital strategy? And why do I refer it so focused here in this conference? Because we see the delivery of this digital strategy using maybe three important mechanisms. First, when thinking about the digital solutions, either for the services of the Commission itself, or when we take a more pan-European perspective to provide digital solutions for the public administration as a whole in Europe, when we think about that, we think about a reusable solution platform that will enable and foster the reuse of what we call business agnostic solutions. The reusable solution platform is an embodiment of the concept of sharing and reusing. Because I said also that the focus of the digital strategy was on data, obviously we want to promote a data ecosystem that again will enable, facilitate and stimulate the sharing and the reuse of data. And obviously we expect to have, for the Commission and for the public administrations in Europe, a performant digital infrastructure that will be somehow of operational of excellence in the operations and the support to all these implementations. The digital strategy highlights co-creation. And co-creation is very much related to this concept that we talk to each other. We identify what are the challenges. And as the Commission said, a lot of the challenges are common to our own public administrations. And once we talk together, we understand what is the common challenge that we are trying to address, then we can find common solutions. The power of co-creation cannot be overemphasized. And again, because we can develop components, solutions that are open source, then we have the co-creation, reuse, and the open source all in one approach. But open source means also that we need to take care about the quality and the security of the solutions. That's why actually, very much inspired by some actions of the European Parliament, we start the initiative FOSSA. And I'm super excited to have been recently into hackathons with the communities, trying to mobilize them, to make them aware of the use of their solutions and environments in the public administrations. And that's why I was so impressed with the Bug Bounty program that actually today has already surpassed the best expectations in identifying vulnerabilities and solutions for open source solutions used by us in the institutions or by the member states. Obviously, I could also not forget to mention our flagship European interoperability framework, continuously being updated, focusing the last generation very much on data. And we also look from your side for inspiration to see what is the next steps. We will see tomorrow with Christian, with all the CIOs of Europe, how can we go into more elaborated collaboration and frameworks that would allow the European interoperability framework to be put in practice and allow us to exploit the power of data. And the Commission has an open source software strategy since 2000 and is going to renew it. And we will see the level of ambition that we have in one of the presentations that we will have later today. Christian talked about innovation, very fundamental for public administrations. But where do we find the elements that will help us to innovate more easily? Where do we find solutions that allow us to start with proofs of concept? When we think about blockchains and AI and data analytics, where do we find the most of the solutions available to us? In the communities of practice of open source. So sharing and reusing is hand in hand with open source. We are surrounded by open source solutions. When you use your phones, when you think about Linux, when you think about Firefox, when you probably have your personal websites done with WordPress or whatever. Now, how are we doing? How are we using open source in the Commission? Well, first, we have to be conscious that our Europa, our main interface with citizens, is all based in open source. We use Drupal, but we don't just use Drupal. The formulation of using Drupal means that we would use a solution. No, we are actually contributors to the community of practice of Drupal. We are actually one of the top 50 organizations that are using Drupal. So we take it very seriously. If you go to our data center that is undergoing a significant restructuring to make it cloud compliant, 80% of our solutions are based on Linux. Think about the ISA Square program. Think about JoinUp. Think about all the building blocks developed in the Connected Europe facility, in the CEF program. All of them are open source. Within the ISA program, we have also an observatory. This observatory of open source has been there for some time and is monitoring and encouraging the use of open source. And last but not least, the Commission is very much engaged in a license, what we call the UPL, an European public license, that is today a free and open source created by the European Commission, already available in a lot of languages. Those are just some of the examples of how we are committed to share, reuse, and use open source. After sharing with you these views, then it's probably worth to see how my colleagues dreamed this event. How can this event move us from the last one in the sharing and reuse and bring this dimension of open source? Well, first, I'm very pleased to welcome Stella. Stella is from the World Bank and is going to share with us the views of the World Bank on open access, open data, open knowledge, and open code. Thank you very much for coming this long way, Stella. We have also thought that it would be interesting that after each one of the sessions, we would have some debates. But rather than having the same people talking to the same people, we said, why don't we go and pick up people that is in the open source, but not from the public administration's point of view? And that's why in these 3 sessions that we have, that are focused on open, share, and link, we invited the moderators to challenge the contributors from the public administrations from their own perspective, a private or a different point of view. Open. Open because we would like you to open your code to make sure that we get better public services. There is a lot of national open source policies, strategies, and for us it's very important that we look into their examples to renew our own open source software strategy. This will be the focus of the first session. Open. Share. Share your knowledge. Share your knowledge to make sure that we contribute to a better society. We return back to the society what we learned and what we are putting in practice. This is actually putting sharing and reuse in practice. And we'll have a lot of examples where we will see people that have shared between public administrations at very, very many different levels. We also look to the challenges that those communities have faced and the way that they overcome them. And finally, link. Open, share, and link. Link to create and build Europe together. In the third session, we'll focus on co-creation and coding. And that is the skeleton of our conference. But very important is to see concrete examples of what is happening in the member states. That's why in the last session, we will highlight 16 IT solutions that have been shortlisted for the awards. And I really invite you to stay up to the end, because they will feel how much warmth we can provide to them by recognizing, applauding their work and giving them these awards. Dear colleagues, thank you very much. Think digital, think open. Thank you.